Hi there, guys. Just wanted to say hello. So I'm Andy. I'm a restaurant critic. This is Leonardo, who's a chef and also a farmer, in fact. What about you guys? What do you do?
Chief Ingredient Officer, Havas.
Chief Operation Officer, Publicis Media Analytics and Insight.
Hi, I'm Harvey Goldhersz. I'm the Chief Data Officer and CEO of the analytic businesses at GroupM.
Oh, well, it's nice to meet you. Just thought we'd maybe, if you don't mind, having a little chat with Leonardo here as well. So Leonardo, these days there are loads of new ingredients that you didn't get 10 or 15 years ago. There are sort of foraged ingredients. There are things you get imported from other countries. I mean, how does that sort of all these new ingredients? How does that change the way that you put a menu together?
That's a good question, actually. I mean, certainly in terms of foraged ingredients, in a country like Portugal, where it's sort of a part of our historical background, it isn't so much of a novelty, and it's always been there, and we've always used it in certain factions of our traditional cuisine. Lately, it has been gone into disuse, mostly because of all of these new things that we keep on getting. Certainly, exotic ingredients being like number one, like things like bananas, mangoes, pineapples. 25, 30 years ago, they were impossible to get in Portugal. Now you can get them, and at the same time, they do open a lot of possibilities into how we can cook, and certainly how we can build up a menu and have like a lot of different notes to it. But to me, I think the key thing is really to have the freshest thing. You can't always find fresh, seasoned, peak ingredients when they're imported from a place that is very far away. So freshness is definitely the key.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and in the world of data, which is your guys' world, I mean, I guess we also got a bunch of new ingredients, right? You've got social media data sources, you've got sensor data, all these kind of things that weren't there 10 years ago. So what sort of effect do these new data sources have on your business?
I mean, if you kind of think about it, all these ingredients, what we do is typically put them together in like what we call a data soup. Or data lake, as some might call it, and then we'll run some segmentation. We'll take the beans out and the potatoes out and maybe the tomatoes out. We put them in separate bowls, and then those become our activation segments through the DSPs. Or programmatically, we collect the data and we measure whether we segmented correctly. And if we get beans back and we took beans out, we're good. And if we take beans out and we get potatoes back, then we didn't do the right sort of segmentation.
That's a great parallel. Yeah, exactly the same. I mean, some clients like beans, some other clients like ham, and so on and so forth. So our idea is just to be able to cook for everybody, and use our investigation power just to see what works, what doesn't work, what tastes good, what we should further investigate.
So before we talk about new ingredients, I think we need to think about what is it we're trying to get done with those ingredients, right? And of course, the food analogy is one, but ultimately, we're in the marketing business, and we want to help drive insights, turn those insights into activation plans, and then measure what happens so that we can continuously improve. Now, within that, the ingredients do differ. I think one of the unique things now is when you walk into any client engagement, those ingredients, to a large extent, are already set. And so we have to work around those ingredients to deliver the insights, to deliver the activation, to deliver the measurement, because every client has some pieces that are fixed. Every marketer has, either they have a DMP, they have a measurement data partner, they have various elements that are already fixed on the table. So when we walk in and we sit around that table, what we need to do is figure out what are the things that we can add that will bring value. What are the external partners or internal capabilities? And
okay. I wanted to take this one, just the image of, you arrive at home, you just open the fridge, what, I got that, I need to cook with this, okay, fine, let's do something. But it does actually happen a lot, and this is fine, because you need to be pragmatic and use what you have, best cost, and this is kind of creative as well, right?
And when it comes to like food and ingredients, I think visualization is important, and that's why we have about 170 visualization partners in the room that feature all sorts of visualization, and I think that's very appropriate.
Okay. Well, moving on from sort of ingredients, I mean, you've got all these new ingredients and so on, as we talked about, Leonardo. I mean, how does the idea of sort of, how does that affect the way that you develop a menu? How does that sort of change now that you've got all the access to all these different kinds of things, and not just sort of individual dishes, but shaping that into a menu?
Well, I think ingredients, they'll probably take about 50%. They'll be your kickoff, so to speak, to coming up with a dish, and that eventually will morph into a menu at some stage. The rest of the equation, if you want to call it that, it's really down to the chef, but mostly I feel that it is down to the team behind it. And I like to use something which is called sort of like a random factor, which is literally just let things sort of speak for themselves. I mean, not like literally speak for themselves, but something like that. So I do like to introduce this totally uncontrolled factor, and that can come from either, yes, the people that work with me, or the places where I source things, or just, like temperament. And I think temperament is a big thing. So when you come up with a dish, and if you want to be creative, I'm not a businessman. I didn't go to college or anything like that. So I don't have this go-get-it attitude or mentality. I just really allow a lot of free space, which is probably a bit crazy, because in the end of the day, you want to eat something that is consistent all the time. But the idea of entropy is like the biggest synonym to creativity in a kitchen.
Okay. And I mean, if you take that sort of analogy back into the world of data, I mean, take the example of customer data. So that's sort of scattered amongst your corporate systems. It's now also subtly buried amongst the social media feeds. So, I mean, how do you sort of pull all that together into a coherent sort of picture?
So, it's interesting. It's one of the biggest challenges is, not necessarily what data to use, but after you've identified that data, how do you bring it together? Data acquisition and data management is a big part of what we have to do as an organization. Bring it back into the meal analogy, we have to bring that data into the table, right? And increasingly, what that requires is that we can map to lots of different systems. So I know there's been a lot of dialogue the last 2 days about owning data. The truth is we're all part of a data ecosystem. And we have to bring those data sets where they can create the value. And we have to map those data sets so that if the insights are sitting inside of a CRM system that's sitting within an individual advertiser, that's great. We can use that, but we may have to bring in other data sets because first of all, you have to scale it, you have to activate it, you have to measure what's happening after you go to market. The other thing is the meal is changing during the course of the meal, right? The ingredients are changing because you're getting constant feedback about what people like and what people don't like in those ingredients, and you're actually changing the actual food while the meal is being served and consumed, which is very different than the way we've behaved in the past.
I think there is also a question of the child raising, right? Because you need to taste things, and you need your client to taste also, even if he doesn't like it at the beginning. For some of them, I mean, passing from CTR, the famous CTR, to something that is more reflecting the real engagement. I mean, this is also education, right? And so you need to educate the taste of your client for these.
Okay. And then if we talk about something sort of slightly different, I mean, in the world of food, sometimes sort of academic research can feed into the way that food menus are designed. So as an example, there's a famous dish by this guy, Heston Blumenthal in the UK, the Fat Duck restaurant. And there's a dish which is presented on a plate and it looks like a beach. It's all edible, but it looks like a beach. But when you eat the dish, you're presented a little seashell. And in the seashell, you put in a couple of headphones and you're played the sounds of the beach. And the dish is called The Sounds of the Sea. Now, that sort of idea came from academic research, which said that people appreciate food differently if they have different sounds. So I was just curious, is this kind of idea of bringing in totally outside academic research, does that ever have an effect on you as a chef, or is that really just a one-off?
I've had that dish. I thought it was incredible, actually. But the example I was talking about before was I guess my way of seeing things. It's more of an intuition-based type of cooking, whereas research-type cooking, it's probably the other side of the coin to it. I do think both of these paths are very viable, and both of them are quite correct. And certainly, like, this cerebral approach can produce, I wouldn't say theatrical, because nowadays it has a very negative connotation when it comes to food, but it can produce this spectacle in front of you on the plate, and that does give you different ways of eating and of savoring the dishes. But I don't know, Vasco, what do you think about it?
Well, it's true. I never taste that dish, but I think it's very important that you, this research and everything that you do for thinking on this kind of dish, that you put more than just food on that, and you put the hearing on the senses, and it's more than food. I cannot do it in my kitchen, for example. I just have cookers, so we need to think forward and think behind the box. I think it's totally different, but it's an outstanding.
So just for example, Vasco, what was that last dish that you served us?
This is a charvel root, super. We have it now in season, and we just fried and then grill on charcoal. We do with the same root hollandaise, and we put it in the middle, and it goes with a pickle of the same root. So it's different textures of the same root in one dish.
Good.
Yeah, that was great.
Really good.
So thinking back to you guys in the world of marketing and data, are there examples where sort of outside academic research feeds in, the kind of stuff from business schools maybe?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to academic research, I mean, I think there are two elements. One is there's the purity that comes with it, which can't necessarily be replicated in the real world. So I think we take some of the elements from research, but a lot of that is only replicable in a lab. But the second piece that I think is more important, which I think is something that we do leverage quite a bit, are the frameworks. So I think academic research comes to us with certain structures or frameworks or new ways of doing things. And I think that is a more applicable way for us to kind of leverage some of that research. So more of the framework, less of the actual, I guess, the analytics of it, if you will.
Just to add to that, I think it's just crucial. The risk that you take by just leveraging your own knowledge and the knowledge of your colleague inside your company is a risk of losing 5 years on the cutting edge of and the state of the art. So just being always seeking for academic guys that know exactly what's happening and what will be the next move. And so the drawback of that, as Michael said, I mean, is definitely the academic framework that is difficult to reapply in the real life, but we shouldn't just leave that aside. It's crucial, vital.
Yeah, and academic relationships are usually important. You know, some of the breakthroughs that we've had working with different universities to create consumer insight tools, they've come directly out of academia, things like Hofstede and others that we've directly applied into our business and have had great success with. We've worked with MIT on facial recognition. We've worked with various institutes. Not to mention that they're a great stream of talent that we keep in touch with. So once we establish those relationships, they can be people that we recruit directly into our organizations or work with indirectly through our partners. So those are crucial relationships that we maintain, and the value is incredibly important to our group.
It makes me think also of, we're doing a tremendous work with CNRS and ENS in France, which are great guys. In transfer learning, for instance, I mean, these are new techniques, and we need to be just on the field and bootstrapping all the methodology that we have in order to be able to deliver as quick as we can. And so these transfer learning techniques, for instance, are just crucial. and they help us on that, and this is great.
Okay, thanks. So maybe also, if you've got anything to add about this, Vasco, as well, but Leonardo initially, I mean, one of the things that's been a real change in the kitchens in the last, say, 10, 20 years are all the new sort of gadgets and gimmicks. So you've got water bars to do sous vide cooking, you've got Paco jets to make your ice cream instead of old ice cream makers, There's all these little sort of gimmickry and gadgets. Now, are these necessarily a good thing, or were we better off in the days of pots and pans?
I love gadgets. But it's funny that you mentioned the package because actually the first ever ice cream machine actually makes ice cream faster than one of these things. So that's food for thought there. No, I love gadgets. I think they're really handy. They certainly make the life of a chef much easier, and you can have some time to spend with your loved ones at night, that kind of things. At the same time, there is a fine line, I think, between how much you can depend on these gadgets without losing your own sort of sensibility, your way of perceiving what you're doing. Because basically, it all boils down to you people or you guys as a guest coming to one's restaurant. You're not thinking, oh, that fridge did that for me or the food processor did that for me. It was always the chef. So it is important that not just the chef or just the whole team actually keeps this level of craftsmanship very much alive.
Right. So I guess the old ice cream machine could make it faster, but it couldn't make 8 different flavors at once, right?
It couldn't make 8 different flavors at once.
Yeah. So
it's a nice thing to have at home, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking about in the world of data and marketing, I mean, obviously lots of new technologies have come up in the last decade or so. What kind of technologies have really have driven the most business impact in your experience?
So, some of the things that I think about now, just in terms of technologies, are just, and they really come down to behaviors. But if you think about, for example, the Amazon Echo and the Google Home, and how do consumers behave when you can just order something while you're sitting in front of a TV? We've got a woman that I work with at GroupM, and she mentioned that her 4-year-old put some chocolate milk into the basket. She had no idea, and I think maybe we've all seen the child who ordered a big dollhouse for several $100s, and her parents had no idea. So those types of behaviors are changing. So we've gone sort of from 0 moment of truth to -1 moment of truth, which is, shopping's a continuous purchase cycle. And then the next generation after that will be RFIDs, where your refrigerator and your milk are basically telling you that it's empty. And the time that you register is your purchase cycle, right? And that's going to carry you maybe for years as a consumer, with those purchases renewing on an ongoing basis. So I think we're just beginning to scratch the surface as to what technologies will do and how we have to keep up with them. Consumers always seem to be a step ahead of the marketing industry, but that challenge is, I think, what drives us every day. And the new technologies are really going to continue to drive us for the foreseeable future.
And as an agency, I actually wrote a piece recently around the fact that agencies have to rethink of the way they structure their analytics departments, right? Because you'll be able to talk to your dashboard. So you'll ask it a few questions and the analysis will already be calculated in the back end. So do you really need a large analytics department, or maybe a few coders that actually code the system in just the right way? And maybe at that point you need more consultants than you do analytics talent. So I think that's kind of the transformative kind of thinking around, like maybe AI or cognitive or Alexa and any of these tools, is that a lot of the basic human calculus will already be ready for you.
Just to add to that, I think, from a pure industry perspective and adoption perspective, let's face also the fact that we are always planning a bright future of automation, big data. We know that it brought a lot of complexity with the human kind of lost between two machines, and so let's not forget that. And I think we need just to be wise in terms of adoption of new techniques, but also as an ecosystem, right? The way we lose the identity connection, the way we once again put people that are lost between two machines that need to translate. We also need to be careful about that, because primarily this is about people. I don't have any issue with people not doing this kind of automated work and automate that. This is wonderful, but just let's not forget that there are people just in this industry as well.
And just one last point. When it comes to cooking, right, you maybe have 12 ingredients, 15 ingredients at most. If you look at the Lumascape, there are 1,000 ingredients, if you will. So I question the need for those 1,000, right, when we're cooking. So in any case, that's just something.
I think we have over 1,000 ingredients in cooking.
So is the conclusion that we're all going to be, pretty much just running managing a few robots in the next few years?
I don't think it'll come down to that, but hopefully it will still always be people, because our consumers are people, and we have to understand those consumers. But at the end of the day, we are increasingly automating what we do to create understanding. I think to Michael's point, we're now onboarding a large client, and we're using AI as a way to, and basically Watson, as a way to actually look at all those documents, right? So rather than reading thousands of documents that lots of people used to write and have to read through to try and figure out what do I need to know on this new assignment, people can just query those same documents and get the answers to the things that they need to know. It's saving a huge amount of time. It allows our people to be more productive. They're a lot happier because they're just getting quick, better answers to things that they want. So I think those types of, technical interventions and ultimately, as Michael also pointed out, structural interventions are going to help us to just have happier employees who are doing more productive work. And so it's all about supporting people, not replacing them.
And I think it's even more, because we need to be prepared to that, because we are business partners of our client, right? And so, we see everything that is happening with artificial intelligence. I've seen literally my emails and topics of my emails are now tagged, so I can just keep whatever I can is automatically in school. These kind of stuff. We need to adopt this as agencies and as business partner of our clients, just to understand how we can help them transform, get to more flat organization, because this will be the case. Flat organization, just coming with no knowledge, just being augmented from zero to something that is admissible to help on a project, and then go out. This is the future, and we need just to embrace it.
Okay, thanks.
Can I just say one last thing?
Please.
If anyone wants to develop kitchen gadgets, whatever they might be, you're more than welcome. Come and work with me. I'm more than happy. Especially if you do something that peels broad beans. That'd be amazing.
So, Vasco, are you a pots and pans guy or a gadgets, or a packagette guy?
No, I work with pans and old style.
Good man.
In my restaurant, I have a lot of plates that, as my grandmother used to make it. So I feel I like this. I love the gadgets too, but it's for some things, some spots.
Could you just tell us about this last dish?
Yeah, this dish is it's called a sorda. It's a traditional dish from Portugal. We just use breads from last days, and when it's when it's dry, we just cook it with a stock from or shrimp or codfish or any fish, and we do this dish.
Thanks. So last sort of topic. The way that dishes appear on a plate in the last, say, 10, 20 years has completely changed. So you've got all kinds of fancy presentation now. In terms of sort of restaurant plating, is that something that you think is just a fashion thing? Do you think it matters? Do you think, in the world of Instagram, do you think chefs need to pay more attention to the way the dishes look?
I guess several ways to answer to that. I think, first of all, interesting facts that, plating actually happened, a lot of decades ago with the Tragro brothers, Juan when they started doing this salmon with sorrel dish. And that was after a trip to Japan, so maybe a small link here to what we're doing here today. I do think aesthetics are important to a certain degree. I don't think you should have something that is overly complicated. Much like having a user interface in front of you. If you have 55 different buttons happening in front of you, you probably don't know which one to press first. Whereas if you have 2 or 3 different things happening in front of you, whilst they are aesthetically appealing, then I think that also enhances your pleasure as someone who's eating that food. So aesthetics are important, plating are important. I don't think it's going to be a trend. I mean, it's been happening for a very long time. Certain ways of plating, they come and they go, and that's how it is. So there's no point being stuck to a certain style or anything for too long. But, you know, in Portugal we say this thing is like the eye eats before the belly. So that's a very rough translation, but if you can get the idea.
Mm-hmm. And Vasco, what do you think? How important is plating these days in the world of the Instagram generation?
Yeah, a lot of people think about it, but the way I do it, or I prefer to do, is to help the customer to eat. So the way I plate, it's help them to eat the way I wanted to eat. So very simple and just direct, and that's it. Not too complicated.
So if you sort of play that analogy out into the world of data and marketing, then you think about all of the visualization tools that have appeared in the last 10 years or so. I mean, when I was doing it, we had sort of the height of, sophistication was sort of business objects or Cognos or something. You could just about get a graph out of it if you pushed it hard. I mean, these days you've got all these much more elaborate tools. You've got Spotify. You've got a whole mass of much more, sophisticated visualization tools that can take all these different complex, rich sets of data and put them together. I mean, are there any really good examples that you can think of the kind of impact that actually has in maybe real life examples? I mean, does anybody care, or does it just look pretty?
No, I mean, visualization is at the core of helping define the insights, right? So, we've had instances where through the visualization, we're able to understand the impact we're having every single time we change content for different consumers. And we never could have seen that level of detail without having strong visualization tools. I think, there are a couple of trends around visualization. One is, increasingly, I think there's a convergence between visualization and functionality, so that an advertiser and a team, both a client and an internal agency team can collaborate. Right? So you have to be careful about when do you go from visualizing to actually helping to simulate data, and putting some of those tools in the hands of our team members. And so we're seeing a bit of a convergence there. And one of the things we do structurally is think about, the PhDs who can write code versus the marketers who want to look at reasonable simulations, and how do we write rules to support those teams? Because ultimately, those things are starting to converge. The other is just in the stack. You have, full stack solutions like our partners at Datarama who are here, Domo and others. And then you have more modular solutions like a Tableau and others where you can actually just point and put that on any existing stack. And I think those start to become not just examples of visualization, but they become strategic choices as to how do we want our stacks to integrate. Do we want to buy full stack solutions? Do we want visualization to be something that allows us to just find those insights on top of other data sources that give us that modular flexibility? And how do we start to build functionality into the visualization to start to put some of the capabilities into the hands of our teams and our clients' teams so that they can collaborate?
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, visualization helps you tell a more compelling story and a broader story across the organization, not just maybe presenting it to a data team, but presenting to a broader team, including clients. It's a much more compelling way to kind of tell a story with visualization. And it helps kind of dimensionalize, multiple data sets across one or two kind of unified dimensions. So for us, it serves more as a storytelling methodology. But yes, I mean, it generates insights. It's a much more, it's a better way to tell a story.
Just to be a bit controversial, very little. I think we're not there yet. I think the tools are pretty good. What Michael was talking about, like talking to your dashboard, is compelling, definitely. No, I think we have, as an industry and in general, a lack of understanding and willing to slice and dice the data, right? I think it's important that we'll see progressively with artificial intelligence and this kind of stuff, the way we transfer the ID inside an organization to our client and will force everybody just to be dashboard native at some point. And I think we're still at the beginning, right? As you were mentioning, I mean, these tools are coming with a lot of connectors, a lot of storage capacity, and then a lot of ways to just be able to transmit an ID. Should it be in bubble? Should it be in pie chart, bar charts, whatever? It's important, but I think people, the entire industry, but not ours only, are not at ease with this way to talk and transmit the ID, definitely. So there is a big work to do here, I think.
And I mean, one thing I'm curious about, I mean, to what extent, now you've got all these wonderful tools, you've got the tableaus, you've got the Spotify's, all, able to do incredibly rich, representations of data, but to what extent, I mean, those tools are really disconnected from the underlying, databases that they talk to. So, I mean, to what extent can you rely on the data that's actually underneath them? I mean, they don't really themselves do anything to help you in that way, do they?
Exactly, and you're right. I mean, you cannot decouple these two things. So you have the basis of cleaning the data, I mean, collecting the data, cleaning the data, creating your own taxonomy, which is first thing. After that, I think people need to be just more savvy to get an Excel like data and put it in visualization directly, just 5 minutes before going to a meeting. That should be easy. And I think people are not adopting that yet enough, I think.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, what you're touching upon is critically important. It's the old garbage in, garbage out, right? And data integrity is something that takes a lot of time and effort. I think for people who are not directly in the business, I think that's one of the most surprising things is, why can't I just push a button and have it come out? And the amount of time and effort that it takes to acquire data, to manage that data and to integrate it before you can actually do your work is often underestimated. But that said, I think it's also important that we have those specialists who are focused on data integrity, who are making sure that what we're doing is strong and stands up to scrutiny and is valid, so that the billions of dollars that are entrusted for our teams to invest on behalf of our clients is well invested with the right information. So those teams have to spend the time, and fortunately we have people who are fully invested in data integrity. That's what their job is. We have KPIs against it, and we want to and need to make sure that we're working with the proper data, because it doesn't matter how beautiful the visualization was, doesn't matter what kind of animation or other things that you can apply to it. The underlying data has to start off on the right foot, and it's probably one of the biggest surprises for people who aren't doing this every day.
And just to clarify on that last point, I mean, these sort of specialist data integrity teams, do you see these as being people in the business, or do you think this is the IT department's problem?
It's both. So, for example, we ingest constantly 230 APIs within our primary platform. And there are teams that are just focused to make sure that data is right. And then let's say you have Facebook and they change their data, right? They post-state their data. And you have one advertiser that says, you know what, it's not a big deal, let it go. You might have another advertiser that says, that's meaningful to me and I want to make a change in my database. So we have to have people who write those scripts to make sure that the needs of each and every client are met in the way that client wants to use the data. So those require dedicated central teams who know what the data should look like if there's just an issue on the data coming in. But then we need people who are dedicated to clients to know the intricacies of how that individual marketer needs to understand that data.
Yeah. I mean, our experience is very similar. I think the ratio of kind of data quality, data cleansing, and data manipulation is still at about 70, 80%, while the data analysis and visualization and reporting is maybe around the 20%. So there's a lot of time and effort still spent on collecting the data, making sure the data is accurate, making sure it fits the specific use case requirements from the clients. And then, yes, once it's clean and the data is in good shape, it's fairly easy to report. Yeah, well, if Facebook shut the API, might as well let's go home. Start.
Any more? Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say about visualization is they're really so outside of the data cleansing, which I think is super important. Again, 70, 80%. There are typically two use cases when it comes to visualization, right? There's data discovery. So really, am I understanding my data set differently now that I see it visually versus in a data sheet or a table?
So it's sort of data profiling.
Yeah, and I think that is, somebody made a point, that's still fairly nascent. And it's still, the jury's still out on that. And then the other side of visualization is on the reporting. Can I make your report look visually appealing and stimulating? And I think we're making progress there. So those are the two use cases. I think the data discovery piece is the jury's still out on there. I don't think we've cracked the nut, and I don't think it adds value, at least in a lot of ways, as to what we're doing.
And just on that last point, I think our best client meetings, whether it's a pitch process or just an engagement, are when actually the client says, "I want to look at your algorithms, I want to look at your tech, and I don't want to visualize." And once I'm comfortable with that, then I want to see the sexy visuals. And I think it's important that we don't get so caught up in what we might call eye candy that we lose the point of is the data valid? Are the methods the best methods? And are we making the right decisions? And is what we visualize truly what's growing our clients' business? And that's what we have to make sure we keep the priorities correctly placed.
I couldn't agree more. We love smart clients that come in and actually ask us to open up our tech. Like, let us see your tech. How did you develop this? What's your methodology? What statistical method did you use for this and that? Those are typically the best meetings.
Okay. Well, cheers. Well, you may be under the impression that this big clock in the corner is the thing that's driving it, but actually the thing that's driving this session is when my last beer finishes, and I believe we're done. So I hope you enjoyed the food. Thank you very much. And hope you all enjoyed the discussion. Just don't disappear, because we're just going to finish, or specifically Vasco is going to finish and just talk to you about one of the dishes. And I'm going to just have a little chat with him about that. And then before we head off to the tapas crawl. So Vasco, maybe you could just talk us through just briefly about the assorta dish that you just made.
Yeah, so ours is a totally different one because we use our sourdough bread like old days, that there was community ovens and everything. And we used to cook once a week for all the village. So this holds much longer. So,
and just one question, so it's important that the bread is old and not fresh, right?
Yeah, so longer the better, so it will be dry. So when you put the stock hot, it will melt it and it will be very like this texture. And you just mix it with the stock and you put it on point and it will be much better. So the better the stock and the bread, and it better that's what it will be.
And I believe that in some parts of Portugal, they will make it in a slightly different way, maybe with an egg.
Yeah, on the south of Portugal, it's called a sorda alentejana, and it's slice of the bread with the stock and the egg in the middle, and a lot of coriander and garlic.
All right, so that's just a regional variation.
Yeah, so it's a lot of north and the south. It's a totally different one.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much to you.
Okay. Thank you again. I hope you enjoyed learning a bit more about assorta. I hope you enjoyed the discussion, and hope to see you on the tapas crawl.